Those. This activity is called Who Am I? And we're going to have three people that are explaining the amount of food they got in various units. So this one's going to deal with, let's see, we got potatoes and milk and eggs. So we have a weight of potatoes. They're all explaining it in pounds. 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 6 pounds. A volume of milk, and they did all different types of units here. So our first lady has got a half a gallon. She got 6 cups, and she got 3 quarts. And then a number of eggs, 2 dozen, 36 eggs, and 1.5 dozen. So we want to figure out what the name of each of these 3 people are, and we're going to use these clues to help us figure that out. So we got Mrs. Delt, Mrs. Berg, and Mrs. Hanson. And so we're going to use these clues so that we can write their names in here for 1, 2, and 3, which one of those people are. So the first clue says Mrs. Delt bought more than 18 eggs. More than 18 eggs. Okay. Now, so for sure, number 2 could be Mrs. Berg, right? Because 36 is obviously more than 18. Now, the other 2 didn't give us an actual number. They give us in relation to a dozen, right? 2 dozen eggs for number 1 and 1.5 dozen eggs for number 3. Well, how many are in a dozen? 12, right? So if 2 dozen would be 2 12s, that means number 1 got 24 eggs. That would work. So 1 and 2, either of them could be Mrs. Delt right now. And number 3, 1.5 dozen. So 1 dozen would be 12. Half a dozen would be 6. So 12 plus 6 would be 18. She bought more than 18. So if she got exactly 18, I think she's out. So 1 or 2, I'm going to put a D underneath both of their names because one of those 2 has to be Mrs. Delt. Number 3 can't. The second clue says Mrs. Berg bought more than 3 pints of milk. More than 3 pints of milk. Now we've got gallon, cups, and quarts, no pints. I don't know how much you guys have worked with volume, with that type of unit, but I always did learn it like this when I was a kid. So the gallon is the biggest, right? So you draw a big gallon. And then inside the gallon, the next biggest unit is quarts. And there are 4 quarts in a gallon. So we write 4 Qs. Get it? There's 4 quarts in a gallon. And then inside each quart, the next biggest unit is pint. And there's 2 pints per quart. So you write 2 P's inside of each Q. So now if you use that, if you want to skip, see now how many pints are in a whole gallon? Well, there's 2, 4, 6, 8. So there's 8 pints in a gallon. Now the smallest one, and I won't write these in all of them, but are the cups, and there's 2 cups per pint. So I put 2 P's in the P's. So now you can see that there's 2 cups in each pint. There'd be 4 cups in each quart, and if there are 16, then there's got to be 16 in a gallon, right? Because if each quart has 4, there's 4 quarts. 4 times 4 would be 16. Okay, that looks more like an R. It's tough writing in this thing. Okay, there we go. So now that we have that written down, you might want to write this down on a page 2. This actually is not a bad idea. You might want to pause your thing right now and write this down on a different page if you don't know it, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of gallons and cups and pints and quarts. And so if you have this written down and you can kind of use it as a reference, maybe that'll help if you don't know it already. Okay? So anyway, what do we got here? Mrs. Berg bought more than 3 pints. So a half a gallon. Is a half a gallon more than 3 pints? Yes. Because in half of a gallon, you can imagine cutting this in half. That would be 4 pints. So this one could also be Mrs. Berg. 6 cups. Is that more than 3 pints? No. 3 pints has 2, 4, 6, 8. Sorry. Yeah. 3 pints would have 6. 1, 2, 3 pints would have 6, and she got 6, so that's equal. So that's not more than. And lastly, 3 quarts. That's definitely more than 3 pints, because 3 quarts would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pints. So number 3 could also be Mrs. Berg. So we don't know any of them yet, but we're narrowing it down. The last one says Mrs. Hanson about 160 ounces of potatoes. So obviously we've got 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 6 pounds. How many ounces are in a pound? 16, right? 16 ounces in a pound of potatoes. So if I did 160 divided by 16, that would tell me how many pounds that is, and that would be 10, right? And if we look up here, number 2, she got 10 potatoes. So number 2 must be Mrs. Hanson. So that's taken care of. That means number 3, the only option for number 3 would have to be Mrs. B, Mrs. Berg. And if she's Mrs. Berg, then number 1 can't be Mrs. Berg. So that only leaves Mrs. Delt left. All right. So that is how this one works. Like I said, it wouldn't be a bad idea to sketch this out on your first page, so that if you need to go back to it to check out the conversions of gallons and quarts and pints and cups, that might make it a little bit easier as you go. But do your best.